you remember that video I made like 3 years ago about Richard Spencer? It was 2019, an innocent time before COVID made us all lock down in our homes, and George Floyd rioters made us get out of those homes and into the streets. And back then, before the dark times, what kind of craziness did we have to talk about? Well, the video that I made was about how Richard Spencer has basically turned into a nobody. He went from being a rising star after getting punched in the face to the Western world's greatest villain after Charlottesville to nothing at all. He just vanished. He and the alt-right he had cultivated were gone. When I was making that video, I distinctly remember thinking, this is kind of a dead topic, but it's still interesting to go back and do a post-mortem of Richard Spencer's short career, especially because that horrendous leaked audio of him ranting and raving like a racist lunatic dropped, and it was probably going to be the last time that he hit the online news cycle. Oh, you didn't hear about that leaked audio? Well, I played the whole thing in that old video, but here's a snippet.
Little fucking kites! They get ruled by people like me! Little fucking octoroons! My ancestors fucking enslaved those pieces of fucking shit!
Yeah, that guy was always a bit off his rocker. Word on the street is, this was secretly recorded by Milo after an event back during the alt-right's peak, where there were protesters going after them while they were speaking. And it's not far off from sounding like what I picture in my head the black shirts talked like in private in the early days before they crushed the socialists in Italy. Anyway, I'm bringing all of this up because there's been some leaked audio of Paul Joseph Watson that people are starting to say is for him what that previous leak was for Richard Spencer. For those of you who don't know, Paul Joseph Watson is a right-wing YouTuber who has a pretty popular politics channel. Unlike most political YouTubers nowadays, he didn't get his start with Gamergate, Brexit, or Trump, but instead has been doing old-style conspiracy content like chemtrails, the New World Order, and Illuminati Bilderberg type stuff since the 2000s, which I guess makes sense since he claimed to be influenced by Alex Jones as a teenager, and eventually did come to work for InfoWars as an adult. However, during the online right's wider shift away from conspiracy content and towards culture war stuff like feminism, Islam, and socialism, both PJW and InfoWars also changed their focus. Anyway, enough rabble-rousing. Let's listen to the leak. This was posted by Destiny on his Twitter account, or his friend's Twitter account, who said that he had it passed off to him by a person who was at a party where Paul Joseph Watson was drunk and going off. Here we go.
Nigger faggot activists who get in my way in London and stick signs up in my face trying to get me to join the gay faggot Palestinian cause. I don't give a shit about Israel or Palestine. I care about white people and not sand nigger packaging faggot coons. Yeah? I'll leave you with that. I really think that you should press the button to wipe Jews off the face of the earth. That's what
Yeah, that's pretty fucking spicy, isn't it? You know, this video is not getting monetized, so please consider supporting the channel, guys. But I'm not sure this is quite the same as Richard Spencer's freakout. When you listen to Richard Spencer, he's literally raging. He's frothing at the mouth and spitting hatred. In this video, Paul Joseph Watson doesn't sound like he's raging. It sounds like he's drunk rambling. He's dropping a lot of slurs, sure. He's clearly being casually racist. But is he on an anger-fueled tirade? Not really, he just sounds drunk. Now let me be clear, he still sounds pretty fucking racist. I guess when I said that Paul Joseph Watson is just your regular conservative, I was wrong about that. Whoops, sorry. In fact, when Xanderhall reviewed that video of mine on his stream, he pointed out as such, and at this point, I am forced to agree with him. It's okay though, because when Xanderhall's reaction was covered on Adam and Sitch's Sunday show, we found 17 instances of him agreeing with me, so I guess I can have one where I agree with him. Yeah, I know the counter says 14. Adam didn't start the counter right away, and he missed a few. That being said though, have I made racist jokes with my friends in private? Sure, because I know their jokes, and my friends know their jokes, and it's a private setting. And that whole press the button to kill all the Jews thing at the end of the leak, that just sounds like an edgy joke that you might make in private. But the rest of it, that doesn't sound like a joke to me. That sounds like a drunken racist rant. But nonetheless, while I believe that Richard Spencer is, deep down, a man consumed by hate, and that hate has literally destroyed his life at this point, I don't think that's Paul Joseph Watson. I think PJW is radicalized for sure, but also isolated and probably in an echo chamber of loneliness. Getting removed from social media can make you feel that way for sure, which is why I think that the left's mass deplatforming initiatives and censoring of free and open debate actually make right-wing radicalization worse, not better. I did have a feeling that this sort of thing would eventually come out though. Remember back in 2020 when Lauren Southern cut ties with the PJW section of the online right? What happened was, Lauren got married, had a kid, and went offline for a while. She was moving away from the young online activist section of her life, just like she had moved away from the even younger cosplay section of her life from before that. People just sometimes move on from what they were doing before. When Lauren returned, her video was talking about how becoming a mother tempered some of her political views. She was still a conservative, but she better understood the appeal to compassion that some leftists like to lean on. And, you know, fair enough. Paul Joseph Watson's response was to say, right-wing YouTuber suddenly returns claiming to be a nuanced centrist, having disappeared at the exact point where everyone else was fucked over and banned for the last 18 months, having thrown them under a bus by funding the very very people responsible for all that. Inauthentic. Lauren has since deleted her reply, but the internet never forgets. I was having a baby. That's where I was the last 18 months. I've been banned from countries, payment platforms, events, etc. It doesn't matter though. A call for nuance really shouldn't enrage you so much if you aren't in a cult, or afraid of what the other side has to say. Also, I'm sure it would be interesting for the public to know that my producers who were allegedly betraying Tommy Robinson were still working for him well after I finished Borderless. I'm tired of these fake internet fights for attention. I'm tired of pretending they're real for views. I'm out. I'm gonna go make meaningful content instead of circle jerk the same talking points over and over again and creating fake e-drama for views. It's meaningless. It's not helping anything. It's the actual grifting. In private, Paul Joseph Watson sent Lauren Southern this series of texts, which do sound a bit unhinged. Why are there no comments on your video? Can't answer? Fraud. Disappointed. So disappointed. You can't answer. So pathetic. Jesus, just allow the comments. It's not hard. Pathetic. How dare you? Fuck off. Leave me alone. I thought higher of you, but after tonight, no. Just have a family life and enjoy and protect your child. Much respect for that, but otherwise, fuck off. So, while I agree with him that banning YouTube comments is kind of cringe, it's her channel. And otherwise, he seems to be going pretty nuts here. Like, if you're disappointed with a colleague, fine. A mature person writes them off and moves on. If you feel the need to explode at them dramatically, maybe it's because you're actually very close and they violated your kinship in a deep way. But probably it's because you're actually in a cult and your fragile worldview can't handle anybody who wants to leave it, so you have to desperately attack them as they're on their way out the door. Paul Joseph Watson has said that reading about David Icke's, I don't know how you pronounce that name, David Icke's conspiracy theories when he was in high school shaped his political views. He is 38 now, still holding those same views. I can't imagine still holding the views today that I held when I was a teenage socialist. It's a common experience for youth to feel marginalized for pretty good reasons. The lack of money and power and status. The political realm is still kind of new to them. They've got a lot less demands on their time and energy, so they can devote more to activism. But most people temper their views to basic center-left or center-right ideas as they grow older because, as they get more experience, they begin their careers and they rank up in various social hierarchies, whether that's work or school or starting a business or through their church or some kind of charity work or a club or whatever. As people stop being young adults and start being just adults, they generally learn the lesson that despite all of society's dysfunction, it still pretty much works when you properly engage with it. When you put in effort, you can still see doors open for you. There is corruption and nepotism and all of that, but there's still appreciation for skill and talent and hard work and intelligence and education. I think what naturally de-radicalizes people the most is the lived experience of properly engaging with the structures that make up society and seeing that they still more or less work. You can still go to school and get good grades and get a job that pays. You can still start a business and grow and then reach back and lift other people up. You can still improve the world in a tiny incremental way through your own efforts, if you put the effort in. It's not guaranteed, you might fail, but it's better than joining a cult. I may or may not have done a video on this topic like 5 years ago, I can't even remember anymore. I know Sargon did one for sure, on Yvette Falarka, that Asian lady who ran an Antifa-adjacent cult in California. Her activist group was called By Any Means Necessary, and they were well known for committing aggressive street violence in the name of radical leftist political causes, long before such events became normalized by larger Antifa groups during Trump's presidency. I use the word cult to describe them because stories later came out of young people who had run away from home, attracted by the opportunity to join the Revolutionary Vanguard, ending up living in squalor in buildings owned by Yvette Falarka. And if they ever wanted to leave, they'd find their belongings withheld from them, and they'd face violence from other members of the organization. Now, I'm pretty sure that Paul Joseph Watson is not the leader of a revolutionary rightist cult where young recruits are held within his compound and bullied into submission. But when I read those texts sent by him to Lauren Southern, it kind of felt like a watered-down version of the same sentiment. And when Lauren says, a call for nuance really shouldn't enrage you so much if you aren't afraid of what the other side has to say, if you're not part of a cult, she's correct. Where Yvette Falarka is a disgusting cult leader who grooms young people into leftist political action, she's still going, by the way, and where Richard Spencer is a raging white supremacist whose entire shtick was coding the hate in a classy, debonair exterior, I don't think Paul Joseph Watson is either of these, though he's got a few drops of both. I think predominantly he's probably a lonely, maybe depressed individual who's been in too deep, too long in the culture war, to the point that it stifled his ability to grow on a personal level, and prevented him from properly integrating into and engaging with society. PJW's been in the trenches for like 20 years, and look at the kind of person that's created. Meanwhile, Lauren Southern took a year off and seems to be immensely better for it. I think if there's a lesson to be learned here, it's that regardless of your political persuasion, your activism isn't worth your mental health, your sanity, or your ability to have a normal, fulfilling life outside of politics. At this point in doing this whole politics YouTube online thing. I view radical rightists the same way that I view radical leftists, victims of a toxic ideology that nonetheless still spread that toxic ideology themselves into the minds of future victims, when what most people should be doing is just getting on with life, having their jobs and their families, and building something fulfilling to them. As a general rule, I am an anti-radical first, before any other of my political opinions, not because radicalism might, in some extreme case, be unfortunately necessary. And no, we're not in that case right now, but because I understand that, regardless of whether or not radicalism may be necessary to right an extreme wrong, it is still toxic to the human soul, and should be avoided wherever possible. If you hear me saying these words, and you think to yourself, my side's radicalism is good, you are already a victim.